So, what is Subaru's perfect run like?
So the true timeline, or the timeline everyone else around him is experiencing. Now let's get into it. Arc 1. While on his way home from the convenience store, our protagonist, Subaru Natsuki, is mysteriously isekai'd. Subaru finds himself in Lagunica, where he also reaches his first checkpoint, the Appa merchant. He tells him he's broke and gets shooed away, but he promises he'll come back one day and buy one. He then runs across the thugs in the alleyway and decides this time to call for help, and who better than Reinhard van Astrea to answer the call. Being freshly isekai'd, he did not realize how big of a deal this really was, and decided not to press him for even more help. Subaru is planning to trade in his phone for Amelia's insignia, and then he has a brief traumatic run-in with Elsa. We can even see him holding his stomach. When Subaru meets up with Felt this time, he already knows how much his phone is worth. However, she still wants to go get it appraised, and turns out he was right. Where he messed up, though, was saying that Elsa wouldn't go over a certain amount, which, why would he know that? So he must be working with her. Enter Amelia to break that up, but still add to the confusion. Elsa still shows up, but before she can attack Amelia, Subaru commands Puck to defend her. From there, the fight continues and Felt runs off to get help. And she finds the best help. Reinhard nukes the place to stop Elsa, but she still manages to escape. Reinhard wants to know how Amelia knows Subaru. She doesn't. In fact, he just asked her name before fainting, but she did give him her real name this time. She finds this very strange and decides to take him back to Roswell's manor for questioning. Arc 2. From here, Subaru wakes up in Roswell's manor. He tries to do some exploring, but finds himself in one of those JRPG looping hallways, so he just picks a random door. Here, he meets Beatrice. In their encounter, he manages to find out she's a spirit, but she saps him of all of his mana and he's knocked back out again. Him waking back up marks his next checkpoint. I'll resume the true timeline from here. He's greeted by Rem and Ram, and to their shock, he holds their hands. He does this to determine if it was them who was comforting him while he slept. He's glad to find out he was right, but they're still taken aback by this. Enter Amelia, and Subaru begins waxing poetic about his crush on her. She also finds this strange, go figure, that seems to be a recurring theme. From here, Subaru asks Roswell if he can work in the manor. Roswell accepts, and this time Subaru can peel fruits and vegetables perfectly. When he gets a break, he opts to hang out with Puck and Amelia in the courtyard. Puck gives him a quick TED talk about how magic works and the different types of magic. Subaru finds out he's a dark type, which is pretty rare, and Puck gives him a basic spell to try out. Subaru tries casting Shamak, it goes pretty poorly, and floods the courtyard with darkness. Later that night, we see Ram and Roswell talking about Subaru, and they agree he's pretty incompetent, but he's pretty sus as well, so best keep an eye on him. And even later than that, he pays Beatrice a visit to get her insight on curses. There isn't any way to stop a curse once it's been activated, she supposes. However, prior to that, it would just be something basic that she could undo. We get a bit of Satella lore here as well, and we find out that her body would be that of a silver-haired half-elf. On to the next day. Subaru wakes up with too much energy in people-pleaser mode, trying to keep everyone happy. This of course also falls into that recurring theme of being very strange. Being very strange like knowing where the vases are without being told. Rim makes note of this. But Puck makes note that Subaru's mind is all mixed up. The insides just don't match the outsides, and this would be accurate. Subaru internally is saying, I feel sick, while he's running himself ragged trying to be happy. His mental exhaustion is apparent and he gets called into a room by Amelia. He's rewarded with the lap pillow that he's always wanted. It's honestly a pretty touching moment, as Subaru comments it's only his second day, so this is pretty special that Amelia would do this. Her consoling him, though, makes those emotions well up and he can't contain it, making it appear like he has a mental breakdown for no reason, really. He falls asleep as she comforts him and wakes up pretty embarrassed about it. He vents about it to Beatrice, and we get a cute little back and forth between the two. He presses her for more information about curses, and it turns out that they must be transmitted via physical contact, she supposes. Now he has a lead. He wakes up pretty hype and convinces Rim and Ram to accompany him to the village. There, he gets everyone to make physical contact with him. I mean, that sounds weird, but it's through radio calisthenics. The twins find it weird as well. When they head back to the manor, Roswaal is on his way out. I just wanted to make note of that really quick because he touches Subaru as well. Anyway, he is in fact cursed, Beatrice supposes. She reiterates that if the curse activates, he will die. He has like no reaction to this, which Beatrice finds strange, but she does agree to dispel the curse for him. Now he has a bit of a call to action to go back to the village to make sure no one else is cursed. So Rem goes with him and Ram stays behind to watch over the manor. It turns out his instincts were right, as when he returns to the village, a lot of children are missing. Upon finding the kids, it turns out one is missing from the bunch. Subaru refuses to let this slide. He looks pretty noble here and shares a moment with Rem. He and Rem do manage to save them, but it turns out she needs to save him from being sent back for another loop as he's attacked by demon dogs. Rem identifies these as mob beasts, by the way, creatures of the witch's creation. The last thing he hears before blacking out is Rem desperately calling for him to not die. Upon waking up, he's greeted by some respect from Puck. In fact, even Ram praised him for his actions. Nice work. After checking on the kids, he meets Beatrice at the gate, who supposes he'll die in a day. We get some lore about curses and mob beasts here, but the important takeaway is that Subaru can dispel this curse. He just has to kill whoever cast it. And this is why he's yet to see Rem in the village, by the way. She went to go handle this herself. Here's another call to action. Upon hearing this, Subaru and Ram go to save Rem. I want to highlight here, Subaru looks very noble to Ram and Beatrice because this implies that he'd give up his own life to save Rem's. When they do manage to run into Rem, she's berserking in her demon form. Subaru seems quite capable here, and Ram mentions a solid hit to the horn should bring her back to normal. We get the amazing Ram throwing scene, and then boom, headshot. Glossing over the lore here, but we do get some twins lore following that. When Rem comes to, she's beating herself up over her previous actions, but Subaru gives her a nice comforting speech. And as if he can't look any better, he says he's gonna take on the mob beast head on while they get a chance to run. It starts looking pretty bleak, but this time Roswaal steps in to prevent the loop. He destroys all the surrounding mob beast and thus the curse on Subaru as well. Rem happily hugs him until he blacks out again, and when he wakes up, he finds that she had been holding his hand in his sleep to comfort him. Subaru then gives Rem another inspirational talk no jutsu. We then pan over to that scene of Roswaal and Ram discussing the battle for the throne, as well as seeing some magical therapy. And finally, later that night, Subaru asks Amelia out on a date, which she accepts. Heads up, this is where the events of Memory Snow take place. I'm gonna gloss over it here, but the OVAs are canon. Check it out if you haven't seen it. Arc 3. Subaru sees a dragon-drawn carriage outside of Roswaal's manor and goes to check it out. He spoke to the butler accompanying it, who turns out to be Wilhelm von Austria. Their conversation goes on for a bit, but the biggest takeaway here is that Amelia might be the future queen of Lagunica. This is also where Subaru meets Felix, who could potentially help him with his damaged gate. Speaking of Felix, he asked Wilhelm why he humored Subaru in that conversation, and he replied, "Those are the eyes of someone who's experienced death several times." That's interesting. Anyway, Amelia, Rem, and Subaru head towards the capital. This is partly to do with Amelia's royal selection. When they arrive, Subaru makes good on that promise to buy some appas from Kadoman, now that he's not broke anymore. And wanting to contact Reinhard, they make their way to the guard station. This is where Subaru meets Julius. Julius, who also waxes poetic and kisses Amelia's hand. This registers him as a rival in Subaru's mind. From there, he runs across the same 3 thugs in the alleyway trying to take advantage of Priscilla of all people this time. I want to highlight that he handled this pretty well for our world, but it didn't work here. I like that. Anyway, Rom shows up, and this is what causes them to run away, their lack of numbers advantage. These guys are hilarious. Fast forwarding a bit to Crucia's house, Amelia wants Subaru to stay put and not interfere at the castle, which of course he doesn't listen to. Coincidentally, he's able to catch a ride with Priscilla to the castle. And here's where he learns that Priscilla is also up for the throne of Lagunica. Upon arriving, Amelia's hurt that he was able to break her trust so easily. I really do like how he's not understanding their norms. Subaru finally gets to run into Reinhard, and this is also where he figures out that Felix is a man. More importantly though, this is where Felt is revealed to be the final candidate for the throne of Lagunica. And here's the famous scene of Subaru proclaiming himself to be Amelia's knight. And this is a catalyst for quite a few chain reactions. The blatant prejudice against Amelia and Julius getting under his skin. Subaru and Julius are now dueling, and Julius absolutely washes him. He wakes back up at Crush's house, and when he does, he and Amelia have a huge argument. Subaru gets very emotional, and the communication barrier here, cultural or whatever it may be, is so apparent. Not to mention that recurring theme of him freaking out for like no reason because he's unable to express return by death. Amelia wants some distance from this whole scenario and leaves, but Subaru remains in the capital because he's still there for treatment. We cut to him training with Wilhelm, and then Reinhard shows up to apologize. He wishes he stepped in and stopped the fight sooner, but offers Subaru a chance to come with him so he can sort this out with Julius. Subaru blows this off, but is using the training as an excuse. We see Rima stayed behind in the capital with him. She comforts him and says that even if it weren't in her orders, she would stay with him. Alright, and now we're back to the Appa Merchant cart, which Rim has briefly taken over. This does mark Subaru's next checkpoint, and I'll be resuming the true timeline from here. And I need to highlight again just how insane this must look to the outside perspective. Subaru looks distressed for just standing here. He then grabs Rim's hand, runs out of the crowd, and takes her to an isolated place, to then go on to say that he wants to run away and start a new life with her. And then he follows this up with a reverse talk no jutsu. So he went from Mr. Positivity a few days ago to self-deprecating. This looks so crazy. Luckily for him, his past actions left quite the impression on Rim, and it's her turn to give him a pep talk. This actually does make him feel much better. We cut to a meeting where Subaru is proposing an alliance between Team Amelia and Team Crush with the purpose of bringing down one of the great mob beasts, the White Whale. He says he can pinpoint the time and location of its next appearance. He knows this because of his phone, or media, in a previous loop, but I want to highlight here just how observant and impressive he looks to the outside perspective. He gives them reasons why he believes they would want to take down the great mob beast in the first place, and turns out he's absolutely correct. And on top of all of that, he even had the foresight to enlist Anastasia's forces as well. Crush does mention she has some questions about this, but is more impressed than anything. How could she refuse? And of course, I'm glossing over some of the surgically precise details here. Let's just say that he's flexing his political skills, diplomatic skills, and his intelligence. Everyone's impressed. Fast forwarding a bit to the White Whale, it is exactly where and when Subaru said it would be. They take on the White Whale, we get some Wilhelm van Astrea lore, and they win. After the battle, despite Subaru being firmly in Amelia's camp, he and Crush have a newfound mutual respect and friendship. And these newfound friends get to talking, and it turns out that the White Whale was just a stepping stone towards Subaru's true goal, which was saving everyone at Roswell's Manor. Crush has to take the remains of the White Whale back to the capital, but a sizable force does remain with Subaru, including Wilhelm, Felix, and Julius. Rim does return to the capital with Crush because Felix determines that she's unfit to fight. I do want to highlight here though that we see a lot more of her emotions towards Subaru. Now, as for the remaining forces, Subaru does inform them that the manor is in danger due to the witch's cult. In the true timeline sense, he's yet to run into them, so this is a bit odd. However, Wilhelm does mention that there is a correlation between the White Whale attacking and the witch's cult appearing. Now, this strategy session does mark a new checkpoint, so resuming from the true timeline, everyone notices that Subaru just kinda spaced out for a bit. After seemingly spacing out, he asks them if they know of any magic that allows someone to be psychologically possessed. Julius replies that there is, and it's not a very common form of magic, but it could work under certain conditions. Subaru then goes on to say that he just might meet those conditions for being able to be possessed. We pan over to the manor where Amelia's having a nightmare, so despite her stoic front, she's clearly affected by people's words. Wilhelm is now at the manor to explain that the blank letters from Crush were a mistake. Interesting call out here, he introduces himself as Wilhelm Trias. Anyway, he goes on to explain that they would like to evacuate the manor as well as all the villagers. Half will go to the capital and then the other half will go to the sanctuary. I want to point out here too, Amelia's own words is that this seems a little too well timed. They gave the fake merchant witch cultist a schedule that was delayed by 2 hours, which they can use to evacuate all the villagers. Here we actually get to see a media being used for real. And we see another media was confiscated by Anastasia's forces. The maps that Subaru drew up for them with the location of the witch's cult were accurate. They also have Otto as a prisoner, and in the true timeline sense, this would be the first time he meets Subaru. However, Subaru says he's not with the witch's cult. To which he literally replies, "I don't know who you are, but thanks for saving me." With that, everything is set in motion, and this would be the first appearance of Betelgeuse Romanicanti in the true timeline. Subaru approaches him by putting on a false display of faith, straight up asking to join the witch's cult. This encounter continues with Julius and Subaru ultimately defeating Betelgeuse. Julius used magic to be able to share senses with Subaru. This allowed him to see the unseen hand. I mention this here because Subaru looks like quite the tactician for suggesting this. The climax is not quite over yet, as Felix informs Subaru that Emilio's carriage is rigged with explosives. He and Otto leave immediately to try to catch up to the carriage, but Betelgeuse returns as a sleep paralysis demon. But Subaru manages to finish him off for good this time, as well as catch up to Emilia. And when he does, he manages to get the bombs to a safe location, thus saving her and all the children. Following that, they make up after that huge fight they had in the Capitol, and this marks the end of Season 1. Now, Return by Death and all the moments that come with it is what really sets this series apart, but this was a fun lens to look at it through. And when you take the save states a bit more literally, it is interesting to see what characters pick out his behaviors when, and it is also interesting seeing him go from completely confident to mental breakdown to completely confident again in like a matter of minutes, and I think that's super cool. I think it really helps you understand better how the world views him.